Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for holding this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being available to us today. In the summer of 2020, as we all know, following the horrific death of George Floyd, many protesters and elected officials, mostly Democrats, across the country proclaimed that because Mr. Floyd had died at the hands of a police officer, that it was time to defund the police. And as Mr. Biggs, the video that was played early this morning, we saw the very statements from some of those legislators across the country and some here in Congress. Now, this hearing this morning by my Democratic colleagues is cleverly called Reimagining Police, not defunding police. Why? Because they're scared to death of being exposed or being connected with what many of their supporters and some of their colleagues, some in Congress, some even on this committee, really want. And that's not reimagining police, that's defunding police. This reimagining term, this ruse, is it's kind of a fairy dust term. Don't be fooled. In cities across America, we did indeed see defunding. Mr. Jordan mentioned a number of those cities. I've got a list of 21 cities that amount to $1.7 billion, billion with a B, that they took out of police department funds all over the country, and we've seen the results of that. And we've also seen liberal prosecutors. George Soros was involved in funding a lot of those campaigns, a lot of other campaigns across the country, and a number of other liberal dark money groups. My Democratic colleagues like to throw that term dark money around. Well, the Democrats have actually been very effective in electing people in causes with this dark money. Those prosecutors are an example of that, and they're doing a lot of damage all across this country right now. They, for the most part, don't prosecute a lot of crimes that used to be prosecuted all the time across this country. An example would be shoplifting, which to some people may not sound like such a terrible crime, but we've seen as a result of them failing to prosecute, we've seen folks with sledgehammers rampaging through department stores. We saw them on television just a couple of months back. We've also seen the left's relentless campaign to eliminate cash bail. Let's face it, criminals commit crimes, and because of this, they're quickly released on low or no bail, and they're let out on the street. What do? Well, they commit more crimes, and sometimes they murder people. We've seen that happen as well in this country. And Madam Chairwoman, let me ask you this. I had called for you to invite the Attorney General and the FBI Director to testify before the subcommittee to discuss their strategy for combating the current rise in violence in the country. And I would again ask that, since we haven't thus far, I would again ask you to please invite them here to testify before this committee. Would you consider doing that?
Mr. Chabot, as you well know, we have ongoing hearings, ongoing opportunities to engage the administration, and what I can assure you is that we will continue to do that.
I don't know if you answered my question. Would you invite them to the committee to testify? That's what I'm asking.
Again, we have both the subcommittee and the full committee. These are important questions. I'm glad that the chairman has clarified the question of police funding, of working together with community groups and policing. So there will be an opportunity to pursue all of those issues by way of invitations to representatives from the administration. I think U.S. Attorney Brown is doing a great job, and my answer to you is there are always opportunities for those individuals to be invited.
Well, that was about as clear as reimagining the police is, but in any event, Mr. Brown, thank you for what you do for your community. But let me ask you real quickly. My time's almost out. Would you agree that when you cut resources or funding from police departments, as has occurred in your community out in Seattle or in other communities across the country, that you're likely to see an increase in crime, which we've seen and experienced in this country now for quite some time? Is that logical, and are we seeing it with our own eyes?
What I mentioned earlier, Congressman, is that we've seen a myriad of different causes that lead to increases in crime or decreases in crime. Now, looking at the crime trends here and in other places in the country, we saw a real increase in crime beginning in 2020, which was before many of the budget cuts that have been referenced here this morning took place. What I do hear from my officers here in my district is that they need more resources. They want more officers. And so I certainly support their need and understand their perspective on that.
Thank you. I think my time's expired, Madam Chair.